Right. Welcome, Mrs Clegg.
Thank you. You can call me however you want.
Now, what was that all about? Tell me what that was all about. Why?
Well, that was a joke.
Was it a joke?
No, I came from a trip and there was an invitation to attend an event, one of the many events that happen around International Women's Day, addressed to me as Mrs Clegg, and I thought it was really funny, so I put it on Instagram.
You weren't offended?
I put it that it is ironic to do something like that. Now there came the Daily Mail with a really strong reaction, and I realized that the country is going through a traumatic time, that perhaps they are losing the sense of humor.
But so okay, within your first answer, you've gone to the Daily Mail. Now I hate the Daily Mail.
I had not noticed.
11 out of 10. Okay, how much do you hate the Daily Mail?
I don't hate the Daily Mail. I think that the effect that it has on girls, especially on British girls here, is really very bad. I think that it contributes to that kind of drip sexism that I think I would have noticed, women my age and probably men your age as well, we don't notice it because we are sort of used to it. Well, I let it go through me.
Right.
Even when it's directed to me, it's like, it doesn't really have any impact on my mind. But it does have an impact on the girls, and I think that it limits their aspirations and it limits their dreams. And that is what really bothers me about it.
Right, and what do you think it says about Britain that it's such a successful newspaper?
That happens in lots of different countries, isn't it?
No,
yes, it does.
No.
You look at the Spanish television, very similar.
Okay, but tell me, no, I'm not sure about that.
No?
Do you think Britain is more or less sexist than Spain?
No, I think that sexism happens everywhere, and I think that you look at the 20th century, lots of the really good things that happen to women happen in this country. So I don't think that you can really compare country to country.
So you don't think a paper like the Mail
I certainly don't think that the
Britain?
Daily Mail represents Britain. No. I spend a lot of my time explaining to Spanish people and European people that the Daily Mail doesn't really represent Britain and the British society.
What does it represent?
They represent themselves.
So I don't know what they said, but I'm guessing what they said was that you should call yourself Mrs Clegg because we're only talking to you because you're Mrs Clegg.
Are you?
No, I'm talking about them.
Why are you talking to me?
I'm talking about you because I think that's partly it, but I think also because you're an interesting woman. And people know who you are, and GQ need to be educated about women in the world.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, but what about their central point that actually shut up complaining about it? Because I'm assuming this is what they said, that you're married, women should take the name of their husband and get on with life. And you don't
Two
agree.
things to that. One is that I think that every person, woman or man, has the right to call themselves however they wish. If they decide to change their names for whatever reason at any point of their lives, that is how you call them. Right. It is not right for anybody else to tell just women that they have to take whatever name it is. They are free to decide. If they change it, great. If they don't change it, fine as well. In terms of that argument as to whether I should be called Mrs Clegg because my public exposure comes from Nick Clegg, that is actually not the right argument. If I had to take the name of the person that put me on public exposure, I would be called Mrs Dacre. Because I have public exposure because he gave me public exposure.
Yeah, but because you were married to
I had, 30 days outside my house when I wasn't keen to do anything. A couple of photographers put by Paul Dacre, so that argument doesn't really stand. I'm a lawyer, I know the validity of arguments.
You put a really, really, really unpleasant thought in my head. So you have thought about me, Mrs Dacre. You said the words there, Mrs Dacre.
I would only take the name that I want, and I'm Miriam González. We believe very much in the international world. We define ourselves very much as citizens of the world. We believe that the Spanish, English,
Miriam,
speaking English and Spanish is fine.
You're a citizen of nowhere.
No. I have many more roots than all that cabinet put together.
Yeah. And listen, you've got 3 boys.
Yeah.
And yet you're a big feminist. And my mum, for example, she had 3. I was the 3rd boy, and she kept going until she had a daughter.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
That's a very terrifying.
Eh? And she eventually got one, and then she stopped.
Good.
So how much do you sort of wish you'd had a daughter at some point? I'm not saying you don't love your 3 boys, but how much would you like to have had a daughter?
Yeah, I would have liked to have a daughter. But in life, you have what you have. They are absolutely wonderful. I think that, yeah, I have always thought about that because I don't know whether you are the same mother to daughters and to sons.
And listen, about the state of women in the world, though, feminism. So my daughter, who's now 22, she basically thinks that if I can put you in the same generation as Fiona, you're kind of not far apart, that generation won all sorts of battles for feminism, particularly in the eyes of the law, but that women are still very, very, very much second-class citizens. That's I'm sort of summarising what she thinks. So there now has to be a new battle, a new wave of feminism. So are you part of a new wave of feminism?
There is definitely a new wave of feminism, but if I might nuance a little bit what you have said, I do not think that it is my generation who got the progress that has been made on women. We benefited from the fact that previous generations did a lot of work to get some basic rights. And when I came, for example, to the workplace and to adult life, it was clear that I had a series of freedoms that my mother had not had. You know, I vividly remember my mother in a little village in the middle of nowhere in Spain, being one of the few women in the village who work and having to defend her right to work. So I consider that we in the Fiona and my generation, we are the beneficiaries of the work that somebody else did beforehand. Generally speaking, I think that we got equality before the law at the kind of mid 20th century, then came equality more or less with all the problems that still exist in the workplace. And the bit that is still missing, I think, for many women is equality at home. And that is an area that is a real debate for society, because clearly the caring tasks keep being put mostly on women. Now, whenever you say something like that, you always find lots of people who say, well, I actually, in my home it's not like that.
Honestly say.
But this is the majority of people, the generality of the situation, and it is a real debate, because now, because of how things are happening in terms of access to medicine and demography, we are having taking care of the children coming closer to taking care of the elderly parents. No? So at some point, we will have to address that. For me, that is what is happening now, with something else, which is that drip sexism, background noise that we mentioned earlier,
which is
that
loud.
I think we have normalized, because it happens so much. It is loud.
Yeah.
No? And we sort of don't notice it simply because it has happened so much.
So when you were out with when you're
care,
doing the Inspiring Women thing in schools, what do you see for younger than my daughter now, but that generation of girls growing up, what do you see as the challenges that they're now facing that maybe you didn't?
Self-confidence. There is a big issue. For me, the biggest surprise in the campaign is that no matter where you are, whether it's up in the north, in the south, in a rural area, in an urban area, actually now that we have done it internationally, whether you are in the UK, whether you are in Spain, whether you are in Serbia, the issue that keeps coming up in every conversation is self-confidence. Where did you get your self-confidence? Which is actually a very sweet question.
Don't you think boys feel the same? Do you think there's an issue?
No, I don't think that is the same. I think that there are issues. There are issues, for example, the challenge of social media, the focus on image in that generation. That probably happens more to boys now than it happened earlier, and therefore it's getting the boys and girls closer. But that issue of lack of self-confidence, that is very much girl-focused. And it's quite shocking if you go to a school 6 years old, because in the campaigns we have gone down to primary schools in some aspects. Now here in the UK with Inspiring Women, that depends from Education and Employers Task Force. We go to a school 6 years old, you ask, how many of you are good at maths? 50-50, more or less. Do you go when they are 14 and you ask the same questions? and many less girls.
Right.
And actually some of the teachers tell you afterwards, well, they are very good at maths. They just don't feel they are. No, there is an issue there about them thinking that they cannot go certain places.
And do you think it's about
no?
sort of, I mean, my daughter says we live in a patriarchal society and we live in a patriarchal family. It's me. Do you think that young girls feel they're being kept down? Do they feel that sense of oppression?
What we know is that from the age of 6, they start looking at jobs as male and female jobs.
Right.
We do plenty
From the age of 6?
From the age of 6, that some
So
of
what's
them
a female
probably
job?
cannot even. Well, we bring sometimes in part of this campaign groups of men and women to a school, 6 years old, and we ask them, what jobs do you think that these people have? If you are male, normally you get banker, doctor, lawyer, journalist. If you're a woman, you tend to be a nurse, a teacher, if you're a young model, or party organizer. Now you tell me why we are party organizer. But you know, you start differentiating between male and female jobs very early on. You keep adding all that background noise as to whether, you know, some people don't measure our achievements, so busy they are measuring our thighs. For some of them, anything that we do is only because of who we have married or who we have slept with. They can speak openly about jobs and things that we cannot do. You put all that together, and we are kidding ourselves if we think that that doesn't have any effect on girls. No? That is actually quite easy to stop. It's about people thinking a little bit before they speak. No?
Okay.
This is not about getting the vote. That was a very difficult thing. This is easy.
Yeah, but
it's about the speaking up, and not only about women speaking up, about men speaking up.
for women.
Exactly.
And for
no?
girls.
Yeah.
So when you're going around, how many men are involved in your campaign?
More and more. This is one of my biggest sources of pride. That when I started the campaign in 2013, most of the events that we did, it was only women. So whenever I was explaining the campaign. Well, I'm asking you now, so I hope that you come to be one of the ambassadors.
You will
be good.
laugh at this, but I see myself as a feminist.
But now, of course, no, being a feminist is not for women. No, that new wave of feminism
Has to involve men.
This is about thinking that men and women are as free as each other to choose whatever they want in life.
Right.
I mean, surely you do, because I don't know you a lot, but I know how you think. I mean, there is no way that you think that we are second-rate citizens. No. But I know tons of men, the majority of men, who think that too. Right. No, but now there are more and more men in the campaign.
To being a bit patriarchal in my habits.
Well, I'm not going to comment about something I don't know. But now, for example, in Washington, the person who is putting the campaign together in Washington is a man. And it's wonderful to see how it has opened up in terms of...
I thought you were about Trump for a minute.
No.
Your campaign?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's wonderful to see how now we have calls we have not only women leading campaigns, but we have men getting in touch and saying, well, I want to launch it here.
But we do have in America, so that's great, you've got a man running that campaign, but we do have a sexist, misogynist, racist, narcissist running the Western world. Mm-hmm. That's kind of scary.
Where the world is scary now, yeah.
Just on Brexit.
But not only because of that. I think that he's part of a wave of nationalism, isolationism, protectionism, xenophobia, misogynism, no? And all that has been given permission. That exists in every society. No? Right. Normally we put a lid on it. Now it has been given permission to come out.
Right, but our generation has spent 30 years taking it on and largely beating it, and now they're in the ascendancy.
Yeah, we have taken it for granted, all the rights and values that we had, and now it's not a bad thing to realize that we need to fight for it, no? For the next generation.
How do you feel Britain has changed since June the 23rd? And can I ask if your kids, as British and Spanish, do they see themselves as binational? Or do they see themselves as European?
No, they see themselves as, they live in Britain, they go to school here, their friends are primarily from here, but they also feel that they are Spanish.
So they're British and Spanish?
Yeah.
And how do you feel? As a Spaniard, do you have a British passport?
No.
So as a Spaniard, how do you feel Britain has changed since June the 23rd?
I think it has changed clearly politically a lot. I think that it is in a period of such change that I don't know where it is going to land, and therefore it's very difficult to make judgments as to whether the country really has changed or simply things are happening.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
But the underlying values may not have changed. It's only that some people are feeling freer to say things that they have always thought. Well, I think it's a little bit, and clearly, for me, the biggest thing is that this has become a deeply divided country. And it's deeply divided clearly between rural and urban, between Scotland and Northern Ireland and Wales and England. But for me, the biggest tragedy is the division between the generations. You cannot run a country against the young people. You cannot do it in dictatorships, and you certainly cannot do it in democracy.
What do you, how much do you remember of growing up in a very different sort of politics?
Well,
or the development of a new sort of politics that was quite exciting?
A lot. And I was born when Franco still had, I think I was 8 by the time that he died. So most of my memories really are of the transition to democracy, and that I remember it very vividly. And I was, my father was playing a role in our region, and it was a period. I have always considered myself so lucky that I was conscious about what was happening when that was happening. He was mayor, then he was in regional politics, then he was a senator, the equivalent to the House of Lords here, but elected, and and then he died being a senator. But the beginning of that party, which is actually a very interesting moment in Spain, faced with all those difficulties, lots of people from different parties decided to come together around one person called Suarez in that point, who had been there already, so he had the experience. He had much less to lose than many others. It would have been very difficult for somebody who didn't have the experience that he had, and he brought the country to a completely different place.
So might we, post-Brexit, be needing a kind of experienced elder statesman, former Deputy Prime Minister, around whom a new party could coalesce and take on Britain?
That I don't know, and you have better places to go to ask, and I'm sure that you would have better views about it. But what I do think is that this is a very defining moment for this country. This is a very dangerous moment, not only for this country, but for Europe as a whole and the world. And perhaps at some points one has to stop thinking about political tribalism. That there are points in the history of countries where a generation, you talk about the generation, you have mentioned that a few times, this is your call to duty to say, okay, my day-to-day political allegiance may be here, but there is something much bigger happening now. And I think that it may be the moment, probably not only in the UK, you see that, for example, in France now, happening a bit more. No?
With Macron.
Of just thinking, well, let's think outside these constraints that we have now, because it's too big what is happening. No? I don't think that since I was born there has been any other more dangerous moment, probably apart from '89, which went in the right direction, obviously, and that was a massive moment of optimism. But this is clearly the most dangerous moment we have.
So you think there should be and there will be kind of big political churn?
Well, I hope that there is some change, because it doesn't seem to be a very effective way to run the politics of reason now. No?
And have you noticed Britain in any way being more racist, angrier, more nasty since June?
I don't think that this can be put on England or Britain. As I mentioned earlier, I think that there are xenophobic people, for example, everywhere, in every single country. But normally they
Have
are
you
not the
noti-
ones
have
who
you
are
noticed
speaking
it
up.
more?
But I have friends who have had incidents that they have been told go home whenever they were in the supermarket. I have been shouted myself at Brexit in the street by somebody. I know 4 or 5 people in my immediate
Well, basically
group.
saying we've had the referendum, go home.
It wasn't explained as reasonably as that, but yes, I have heard that. And to me, the issue, as I say, is not so much that there could be some. I'm sure that in every country, there are people who think like that, and they may not shout it, but they think it. But I think that when that happens, is really very important that those who are in power react, and react openly. And it doesn't matter whether it is a reaction to a group of citizens feeling that they have to deal with this kind of incidents, or whether it is a reaction to the judges being put into question. I mean, if you are into government, you need to react to that. It's part of the basic ethics of government.
And our Prime Minister has gone down this hard Brexit route that very, very, very few people voted for. When you interviewed her for the Today programme...
I have almost 45 minutes, and the BBC managed to broadcast only 2.
No, wait a minute. But you asked her something very interesting, because you said to her...
The interesting bit, they didn't broadcast it. I asked her about immigration and whether she felt guilty about the speech. I asked her twice, I think. About the speech that she had given to the Tory conference that year.
Oh, yeah.
Which was, to me, a very defining moment about allowing the blaming things on migrants, no, and specifically on European migrants.
What particularly in the speech?
The tone of the speech.
Right.
And my argument was that, and I have written about that afterwards, that as a lawyer you look at that speech and sentence by sentence, you cannot say, well, this is terrible. Of course not. But you look at the overall tone, and she said the tone, perhaps inadvertently, but my question was, do you feel guilty? And she didn't say, and the BBC didn't broadcast.
They didn't broadcast it. Well, the one bit they did broadcast, which obviously flowed from that...
What about the shoes? No, they broadcasted something about the shoes.
No, but listen, what you also said to her, which I thought was really interesting, and I wondered whether it was based on any kind of inside knowledge and feeling, you asked her if she might lead the Leave campaign.
Did I ask her that?
So why did you think she might be a leader of the Leave campaign? Because of that speech?
What I tried to do with her was, I told her, look, this is going to be not a usual interview, but I'm going to ask you, apart from those questions on immigration that I asked at the end, the kind of questions that the girls ask to us when we go into the schools.
Right.
So a bit more of a personal question.
She doesn't strike me as an inspiring woman type of woman.
Well, every woman is inspiring, and there is a role model behind every woman. So I was trying to come to, do you feel that you are a woman in politics or a politician who happens to be a woman? When did you decide to
What's
become...
your feeling on that?
I can't remember what she asked, but yeah, she gave me quite a few wishy-washy answers, I think.
She's, because Thatcher was a politician who happened to be a woman. And I think she's...
Do you think so, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, Thatcher never really fought
Yeah.
for women, did she?
But that's quite different to fighting for women. No? And basically, in terms of the women issues, I think that you cannot defend during the day women's rights and sleep with the Daily Mail at night. And that is, something, a formula you cannot break.
Wait a minute, you've now put the context of Mrs Dacre and sleeping, you're now sleeping with the Daily Mail.
Not me, I was talking about whether women in power, like the Prime Minister, can be seen as big defenders of women's rights.
By that agenda. Hard Brexit. What I was asking though about your interview and your question, could you lead the Leave campaign, Mrs May, was whether that was based on your reading that speech or the feeling that you had, possibly through Nick, that she's actually a leaver. And that's why she never got involved in the campaign.
I don't know. Listen, we have all seen what's happened there. No, she was lukewarm on the Remain. She has now, for whatever reason, she has gone to the Brexit at any cost. I think that one of the best way to define what is happening. I think that recently I have seen it in the speech from Tony Blair. No, she's not driving the bus.
Yeah, she's been driven.
She's been driven,
Yeah.
and that explains a lot.
Have you noticed that Nick's had a bit of a rehabilitation with the public?
Has he?
I think so, yeah.
I've been very busy to notice anything.
Do you not? In that he's standing up and clearly saying what he believes, and he's not being, he's not having this Brexit at any cost. And
I try to understand what happens in British politics while looking at it with a little bit of distance. And something that caught, and I have also written about this, but it caught my attention a lot, is how I quite admire that. It doesn't really happen in Spain. Is that you can lose an election, and the next day you go to the street, and you find a level of public warmth. They think, where is it coming from?
That's
no?
awful.
But then you continue, it doesn't close the door for you. I don't think that you really can do that. Spain is much more
black and white.
emotional in that sense, exactly. No? And I think it's a sign of democratic maturity also, no?
Okay.
Which surely you sort of need it now in every country, because people come to politics younger and younger, no? So, yeah.
Is there a part of you that wishes he'd lost his seat and you could just...
No, of course not.
No.
Of course not. I put my heart and soul in that campaign.
Right,
yeah.
but he's gone from being Deputy Prime Minister to a part of a very, very, very small team.
Yes, it was heartbreaking. Yeah.
In what is becoming Scotland a one-party state and England a one-party state.
Yeah.
It's depressing.
What is depressing is the situation that we all face.
Right,
no?
but having gone through the hard yards of opposition and getting into
you cannot be in politics if you are not ready to see the highs and the
I'm
the
just
lows.
asking whether you wouldn't have
no?
felt it been easier just with him to have been part of that sweep them out.
To go, no, to have lost, no, that would have been terrible, yes, of course. And I found it, heartbreaking, the result as he did, and everybody else, not only for him, but for everybody else who had been helping,
and
of course.
What were those years like?
Having said that, I would have done exactly the same in my country. I have thought about that a lot.
What do you mean?
If I had to take a decision, even if I knew that it would come with a lot of cost.
To go into government with Cameron? With the Spanish
to
equivalent?
go into government at that particular moment, with the economic situation in that particular moment, I come from a side of politics that is much more tactical, probably because I have lived the transition, I think I would have done the same.
Do you think if you'd have known then, did you feel that it might end where it ended?
Yes.
You did?
Yeah.
Because?
Because it is very difficult for the small party to make a success in a coalition, because if you are a small party, the best possible situation that can happen to you is that you grow a lot to become very important in opposition, and you sit out there and you just criticize everything, and you keep growing and having a wonderful time, but not really contributing with anything to the government. And from every point of view, that is the easier thing to do, but the less meaningful thing to do. No? And I think that to have been given the chance to change something in the country, with all the frustration that comes to have seen that afterwards, that economic stability actually wasn't so important, because there it went in 1 year of a single Tory government. No? But still, to think that you contributed to that, it must be a wonderful feeling. I think so, yeah.
And
it was tough, but worth it. Yeah.
Right, and how different were the feelings of that brief period of what became ludicrously known as Clegg mania, and then the kind of hard yards? How different were those feelings?
Internally, I have always, I'm the daughter of a politician, I have worked for politicians, and I've been very close to this world, so I have always learned to put a filter to everything. So for me personally, the difference in feelings wasn't very, very high. No.
And I noticed you said somewhere that you cannot remember the last time you saw Nick cry. Is he just
Did I say that? Well, I have said lots of things.
Is he just a hard bastard, or is he sort of just so happy-go-lucky that he just breezes through life?
No, he's a very. He believes in reason, Nick. He really believes in. He's a true. I often tell him, you are a true liberal because you believe in reason, you believe in arguments, you believe in considering all the aspects of whatever argument it is. No?
So you must find the world very, very difficult.
I'm very Spanish, so I come from the other side.
Are you
I'm probably not too emotional for being a Spaniard, but,
but you're more
but I'm Mediterranean still.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have to think about reason.
And just one final thing on Brexit. I read a piece you wrote with your legal hat on about this whole business about trade negotiations.
With my non-Mrs Clegg hat on.
With your decade hat on. And the impression I got was that you basically think we as a country are not remotely equipped for the level of difficult negotiations that are about to happen.
That is correct. That is correct. I think...
If they asked you to help, would you do it?
I have received the RFPs, we call it, so that you can the offers to bid for the work.
What, for negotiation work?
Yeah, and for us it didn't particularly make sense. I think that for many law firms it may not make sense because it provides for the source of many conflicts. But I think that even if you take it away from the legal side, the normal situation for a country to decide to jump into something like this would have been how? By having a plan B. Mm-hmm. So that whenever Mr. Cameron, in this case, decides to put to the country this referendum, he should have known, and if this goes in this direction, this is what happens, and if it goes in this direction, this is the alternative thing that is going to happen. Clearly that wasn't the case. So now you run from the 24th of June in the morning to today, we still don't have a plan B. And this is what, 9 months, more or less. Well, of course we are not ready, right? Because we don't have the plan B. Once we have the plan B, we need to negotiate it.
And what is the level of what are the numbers of top quality negotiators and diplomats that are needed to do this kind of thing?
Well, many, they are, yes, of course. It depends on how many agreements they want to have. The most important negotiation and the one that they really need to get right is the one with the European Union, because no matter how many agreements we do with the rest of the world, we are not going to be able to compensate for not only the market access, but the regulatory access that we lose with the EU. I have to tell you though, Alastair, that for me, all this legal discussion, it brings the debate very much to the nitty-gritty, and it avoids thinking of something much bigger that is happening. You know, that was the situation on the 20th. If you just consider the vote, that is what was happening. We were losing some market access and we need to replace the market access. Things have happened since the 23rd that they take this into a non-trade, much bigger, much more dangerous direction. And that is not because of the vote. That is because of decisions taken by the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister only. So even if you look at that trade side, the biggest thing that is happening now is that the UK seems to be moving away from that regulatory multinational organized world values view of the European Union into something else, which is the US led by Trump. That is the real worry. No? Everything else is almost technical, difficult, but almost technical.
So but she's made, and you having met her, are you surprised she's gone that route? Or
I am surprised to see any Prime Minister taking that route, of course. Yeah.
Because it's dangerous?
Because it's very dangerous, yeah. It's very dangerous, you know, for the next generation. For me, this is, our duty is to try to come out to a better place, not just for us, for our children. It's a massive thing if our children are not going to live in a world that is run by multilateralism, by understanding that internationally you need to work on the basis of compromises, not my interest first, always at any cost.
Do you think she's deliberately and strategically, if that's not flattering?
I'm not sure if I'm not sure whether it's deliberate or strategically, but she happens to be there now.
So she has taken a decision to turn Britain's back on Europe and face much more towards Trump's America.
I think that is the risk that she's running now. I don't know whether she has done it by design or she has found herself in the situation because of a series of rash decisions, but that is what we are facing now. And it is, you know, going from a world where there had been a very smooth transition from the UK empire into the US Pax Americana and kind of overall influence in the world through multilateral institutions, the Bretton Woods, this was about the only positive thing that came from the world wars, and we're about to lose it. That is a very big thing.
And does Trump?
And I don't have any doubts that she's sincere when she says that she tries her best, but her best may not be good enough if this is where we end. No?
And does Trump keep you awake at night?
Well, not awake at night, but it worries me a lot. Yeah, of course.
Because?
Yeah, for the very same reason. For the very same reason. That model of world is a model of world that I really don't believe in, and I don't think that it is okay. For me, the biggest source of hope is that the majority of the U.S. people have not voted for Trump.
Yeah. And do you think in Britain that we are? We talked a little bit about how our politics is not working. I mean, do you think we are heading to the need for new political parties and new political systems to develop? Do you think this, where we are, has just had it? I mean, I agree with everything you said about Theresa May, and then she's just won a by-election in Copenhagen.
Okay, in the short term, of course, you have wins, no? But you cannot put your short-term political interest above the interest of the country, and especially above the interest of the next generation. That never works. It's just a matter of time that it doesn't work. I don't feel that I can venture into giving you in particular any views or lessons about politics in the UK and the configuration of politics, but it seems to me that there is a massive challenge now as to how do you put together an opposition to that movement. No? I do realize that in some parties the tribalism runs very deep, but I also think that there are lots of very rational, very committed, very worried people in lots of different parties that have much more in common with each other than the nitty-gritty things that that separate them.
I've got much more in common with Nick than I do with John McDonnell.
Well, you say it.
Yeah, okay, I've said it. What about your experience of the British establishment? Are we a more class-based country than Spain?
Yes, definitely.
And where do you see that?
Oh, and everything. In Spain we had a big break. That was the transition. Yeah, but it's almost symbolic there.
Right.
So we don't give it as much of a symbolic presence. But the transition to democracy broke the classes, and it meant that the middle class is huge in Spain. Pretty much everybody considered, from close to very rich to the people who work for those very rich people. No? And that gives a very homogeneous basis for a society. In France, they had it because of the French Revolution, but whenever you have a big break, you always have like one bigger class that sort of takes over the country. No? I mean, here, in a way, you have the Industrial Revolution, but you don't have any class-based or power-based revolution. And as a result, you still have the classes there. No? For me, I always joke that every country will have something a little bit difficult for all the others to understand. No? In the US, for example, is arms. In Spain, is food. You just mention something critical about food, and it goes in every direction. Here, it's class. It's difficult for all the others to understand, but it clearly runs deeply in the country.
But having lived here as long as you have, do you think you understand it or not?
But some things I don't.
What don't you understand?
For me, for example, the thinking about the value of the class is something that is not natural. Isn't natural to me. So
that people aspire.
I think what is really impressive in people is what they have done, and actually, if they have come from humble origins, much more impressive. No, because it was clearly more difficult for them to get wherever they went. No, it's easy when you have a positive environment to do well in life. Of course. No?
Do you understand? Because I don't. Do you understand the British people's relationship with the monarchy? Yes,
I do. I do understand that.
Because?
Because if I had this queen, what is not to admire in that woman? No?
I agree. Oh, she's extraordinary. But
been there forever, seen it all, working hard all the time. Of course, she has.
She's also,
admiration.
what I can't work out is hers is the only institution that has bucked the trend of public respect. Now, how has that happened? Is that because of our class system? I don't know.
That I don't know. But there is. I come from a country where the monarchy doesn't play a similar role, but I can understand the value of some institutions that bring stability, especially in times of turmoil that people need an anchor.
Do you think she's looking forward to the state visit of DT?
I don't know her well enough.
If you and Nick,
or at all,
if you and Nick were invited to said state visit white tie dinner,
I would not go to a dinner with Trump. No.
With Nick?
If I would go for dinner with Nick, I have dinner with him every other day.
Would Nick go for the state dinner?
I don't know. You will have to ask him.
Okay, well, I think he might. I think he might, but he should just do a little protest, walk out halfway through. It is interesting though that she's more popular than she's ever been, and yet everybody else is less popular than they've ever been. It's quite strange.
Yeah, the value of time also, no? I don't know.
Endurance, resilience, keeping going. Yeah. I think, by the way, that's
a very British characteristic, not endurance.
I think that is why Nick has had a bit of a rehabilitation.
Endurance.
Because he's just carried on smiling.
Yeah, perhaps.
And he's quite resilient. Did you become...
But you have to. I think that politicians need to, no matter what has happened to them in the past, they need to chip in
and keep going.
To not just to keep going in general, but in this particular situation in the country, no?
So
it's just not on to leave the parliament and go somewhere else to have a good time, when the situation is where it is.
Who could you be talking about there?
There you go.
Are we talking Cameron and Blair or Cameron or Blair?
Well, Cameron, Blair is back, no? Isn't Blair back?
Would you like him back?
I don't have any views, but I think that people like Blair have a role now. Yes, of course, of course.
And do you think?
That,
so Cameron should not.
Blair, Mayor, all of them. No?
Cameron should not have buggered off.
I think that he should not have convened the referendum where he convened it.
He couldn't what?
He should not have convened the referendum when he convened the referendum. I think that it's very difficult to explain why he felt he had to do that.
Tactic.
If he had convened that, he should have made sure that there was a plan B. And certainly when something like that happens, you stay and work to try to get the country into a better place.
Right. Did you, of all the sort of mingling and the work you did you like any of the Tories at a personal level?
Oh yes, of course.
Who did you like the best?
I will not tell you that, but I like many, and many in Labour, yeah, of course.
More Labour than Tory?
Well, if we put you there and then you make it really unbalanced towards Labour.
Is there anything you dislike?
I dislike that not anybody, but I dislike generally that feeling of the sense of entitlement that runs in some bits of the Tory party, and probably because of part of the discussion that we had earlier about class, and I find that difficult to deal with, but
And if you don't hate the Daily Mail 11 out of 10, but when I see Boris Johnson described as the Foreign Secretary, having led the Brexit campaign, I get very close to 11 out of 10. Where are you on that?
You're quite emotional, aren't you?
I'm very emotional. I'm very Mediterranean.
Well, if they kick you out of here, we get you into Spain.
No, at the moment I'm trying to get an Irish passport, even though I've got no Irish passport.
Yeah. No, there are lots of people trying to get different passports.
How do you feel when you see Boris representing Britain in the world, having led that campaign?
I feel sad that we have come to this, because I do realize that this is not my country, but I'm the mother of 2 British children, but also I'm full of gratitude for the opportunities that I have been given in the UK, and therefore the Daily Mail may consider that this is really not my country. I do think that this is a bit my country of adoption, and it's just, I was hoping that there could be better people to represent internationally the country, people who go to the meetings, who engage with their colleagues, who take seriously the role. This is a, this was a generous country, You need high-level people to represent it.
Will Nick stay in Parliament after the next election?
I don't know, but I don't know.
Do you think you'll always live in Britain?
I honestly don't know.
Do you think you might end up living in Spain?
I don't know. I cannot answer any of those questions because I don't know where things are going.
Yeah.
I don't know
but do you feel
where
fundamentally
things will go. But I can tell you very honestly that I would like to be, right now, with what is going on in the world, I would like to be in whatever place it is that we can make a difference.
Right.
I don't want to, to come to see my children 15 years from now when things have gone, and they can go very wrong right now. I want to be able to look at them in the eye and to say, I was there helping, right? We may not have managed to get it there, but boy, it wasn't for lack of trying. And if that is in the UK, that's in the UK. If that's in Spain, it's in Spain. If it's between the two, it's between the two. I mean, God knows, the life of families depends on lots of different things. But I think that this is sufficiently dangerous a moment for everybody to have to think of, where can we help? And I hope that everybody is making that attention. I think that more people need to be into politics. That doesn't mean that they need to be into the formal side of politics, no? But they need to step in, no?
Yeah. You never went to Chequers?
I never went to Chequers.
Do you regret? I mean,
no.
The mobile phone signals. Why did you never go to Chequers?
Because for me it was very clear from that beginning that you mentioned. Did you know that this was going to be difficult? I knew from the very beginning that this was going to be very difficult when they decided to get into coalition, and I was always of the view that it was very important to keep the boundaries between having to work together in a particular situation of the country, and obviously having to have the atmosphere that enables that working together, and going to a personal friendship of being on top of each other all the time, which, if I may, is quite Tory.
Quite Tory?
It's quite Tory, no? Or that generation of Tories seem to be going out with each other all the time and going on holidays together. You say that again, I haven't said that. But basically doing much more than just working together.
But you very deliberately didn't want to do that?
I very deliberately wanted to keep things slightly separate on the work side and on the family side. We come from very strong families. We have lots of very close friends that we couldn't really see during that time, and I always felt this is the priority, to keep the normal time.
But Chequers, but you went to lots of establishments.
How often have you been in Chequers? I don't know.
Hundreds of times. And I didn't like it because the mobile phone.
You didn't like it?
No, because I don't like all that stuffy stuff.
Yeah.
But it's part of.
Well, some of it you need to do, no?
Yeah, but you didn't have to. Did you?
No, I felt that some bits I had to.
Like?
But they ask you to do things, and I try to. Not to do the minimum, but I try to do things naturally without stopping everything else in my life. But if I may, I think it may be quite different if you are a wife to being in the role that you had, obviously, where you can choose what you want to do.
Yeah. But you chose, for example, to go on the campaign trail, but not to go on the platform and do the hand-holding, kissy-kissy, end of conference pictures. So what was the difference? What was the difference?
For me, the campaign trail, I have always tried to help those who are close to me. So
and if you were British, would you be a Lib Dem?
I'm a liberal.
Right.
I'm a liberal.
Yeah. Old-fashioned liberal.
I believe in the value of the individual. That is probably where we disagree. And I think that everything in the political system comes to the individual. And with my freedom. I want the freedom respected, no? Because I believe that if you give a chance to the individual, everything goes in the right direction. Do you believe that?
That's why
But you don't put the state above the individual. Perhaps you're not Labour.
No, well, I wonder.
You wonder now.
Is it true you didn't cook for Osborne? Was that?
That is true.
Because you didn't like him, or because you didn't want to cook?
Because during the campaign, I respected him. I still respect him. I think he's good. He has stayed, and
he wants to be prime minister still.
But that I don't know. I don't know whether he can. But I think there is something impressive in Osborne, though I disagree a lot with a lot of his views. But I had been told that he went to talk to various journalists to put together a series of personal criticism at a personal level about Nick and me at the time, because it involved me too.
During the
and I have a very
2010?
emotional during 2010.
Right.
At the there were 4, you know a lot about campaigns, so that's those last 4 days from the Sunday to the Thursday, they are very crucial, and I do realize that it is a battle, but there is a limit to the battle, which is the personal stuff and lies, no? And I have a very emotional attitude to food. You know, if it doesn't come from inside, my mayonnaise curdles and my cakes don't rise, and you know, I couldn't do it.
You could have spat at it.
Couldn't do it.
No.
I'm not a nasty person.
Did you cook for any of them apart from Cameron when you gave him bony fish?
But that was a mistake.
Yeah,
it was a mistake.
But
It really was a mistake.
Why was it a mistake?
Because I shouldn't have done that. That was a faux pas. I didn't think about it. I was there so proud with the wonderful sea bass I had bought.
Did he spit it out? Did he say it was absolutely charming and lovely?
No, he was very polite.
See, it's true. I think this is right. I've been doing this for a couple of years, and you're the second woman. Now, part of the reason, this is the editor's chair here, Dylan. Part of the
he has
reason,
an issue with women?
No, I don't think he has an issue with women. It's a men's magazine.
The other woman was Nicola Sturgeon.
Nicola Sturgeon.
Big defender of European migrants now.
Big defender of the European Union and Britain's role within it.
Yes.
So do you like Nicola?
I do. I don't share all her political views, but I do.
And do you think Spain would... You see, I shouldn't say this, but I'm quite interested in this Scotland staying in. Do you think Spain would block it because of Catalonia or not?
And it has nothing to do with Catalonia, absolutely nothing. This was similar.
They would do that.
Well, I think that Spain, I hope that they are reasonable, they apply a reasonable attitude to Brexit as a whole. No, they are not. This is a stable government. If we manage to have this government... Do you think the Spanish government
might not block an independent
That I don't know. I cannot make predictions, but the equivalent situation could be that Spain decides to leave the European Union and Catalonia wants to stay within the European Union. This has nothing to do with the current situation in Spain now and the discussions between Spain and Catalonia. It's just two completely different things.
But the politics.
In the European Union, we have done, belly dancing almost to try to accommodate everybody who wanted to be part of the European Union. Some of them were integrated during your time also, perhaps not being completely ready for being there, and still we have always felt the duty to try to embrace everybody who shared the principles and wanted to be it. It would be unprecedented that the European Union kicks out people who share the values, shares the commitments, shares the principles, they share the economic situation, everything. No?
So you might go and help the Scots.
Right.
But so you don't see, because it's becoming one of those cliches, those conventional wisdoms, Scotland couldn't get into the European Union because the Spanish will block it. That's nonsense.
Well, I haven't seen the Spanish government blocking anything, so...
Yeah, okay. And you think it'd be a good thing?
So what, if Spain blocks?
No, if Scotland were able to stay in the European
Union. I hope
that
as many people as possible stay within the single market, certainly, and hopefully within the European Union. And I hope that this country thinks
about Brexit.
Thinks about Brexit and the implications not just Brexit, but the decisions that have been taken after Brexit.
Yeah.
No?
But, so you
half of the country here wanted to be part of the 48%
so
wanted to be part of the single market.
You do think Tony was right to say we should actually still try and stop this?
I think that it is right for anybody to think that in a process you try to think at every stage, including at the end, whether the costs outweigh the benefits or not. I mean, surely, no?
Which they do. Did you, when you became Mrs Clegg as a public thing,
as opposed to Mrs Dacre,
when you became Mrs Dacre, did you look at the ones who'd done it before, like Norma Major, Cherie, Sarah, and did you think about how they had tried to do it? Because Fiona, as you know, tried to help Cherie and it was very, very difficult. Norma Major seemed to me to get a very easy time. Do you think that people on the left
I looked a bit
treated worse?
Yeah, I had not thought about that, but perhaps. No, I didn't look at it in that sense. I didn't look at it into what are you, how can you do it? I looked a lot at what had happened with the children.
Right.
So how can you ensure that this doesn't affect your children? I don't know for how long it could be. Both of us felt very strongly about it, and yes, we not only looked, but we asked around, and we tried to, tried to get as much information as possible as to how it could be done in a way that could be effective. That yes.
And so just, you said you hadn't thought about that. I mean, I think about it a lot, because I think Cherie got a very hard time because she was, not because she was Cherie, but because she was the wife of a Labour Prime Minister, in a way that Sam Cam
and also she was, to be fair, she was the first woman probably here. Was she the first woman who worked while her Prime
tried
Minister
to work
was
full time, yeah.
So that, that for some sectors of the conservative media is a difficult thing to digest. No? So it's always easier to focus on attacking the wife. No? It's the cowardice route.
It's a what?
The coward route. No?
You're not saying Paul Dacre's a coward.
No.
Oh, Miriam.
Hey, I invited him to the Today programme to debate with me on air, and he didn't dare. Huh?
He is a coward. He's a hypocrite and a bully and a coward. Did he reply?
Yes. It's very important to answer back.
Oh, yeah.
Very important to answer back. That may have been a mistake at some point when we were not answering back.
No, I agree. Totally agree. Well, we used to do a daily rebuttal of the Daily Mail in government, and Tony stopped me from doing it because he thought I was going mad.
I have read about that. Not only a rebuttal, I think it's something that that sector, we should not personalize just on him, but that sector... He leads it, and definitely for me, Bannon is to Trump what Dacre is to May. That is the importance of it. No?
Yeah.
But
That's a great line.
for all that,
I love that.
I'm good on lies, aren't I?